unsquishing the parts of you that you squashed in order to stay safe. This guide is telling me there's a song by Leonard Cohen that has something to do with what I need to work on today.
There's a lot to a performing hypnosis show that makes it appear so big and entertaining.
Normally, after I work with somebody 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, they can't even handle coming every week. It needs to
Uh-huh.
be every 2 weeks because what they're experiencing, it needs to be integrated.
Welcome to episode 54 of Super States, Practices of Transformation with me, your host, Joshua Peters. Super States explores the intersection of using trance states in all of the huge variety of ways you can access them with personal or professional growth. In every episode, we talk to world-class experts, to industry leaders and revolutionary thinkers, people who share the latest information, tools, and their own personal stories designed to inspire us on our journey. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcast host or subscribe on YouTube. That way you can stay up to date with new episodes. If you enjoy this show, please give me a 5-star review. That is the best way to help the show grow. Today, my guest is Mahesh Grossman. Mahesh is a somatic hypnotherapist specializing in the treatment of anxiety and trauma. With a unique approach that integrates with mind and with body, Mahesh helps people heal deeply rooted emotional wounds, enabling them to lead more peaceful and fulfilling lives. There's a lot to learn here, so stay tuned for Breaking the Cycle of Anxiety with Mahesh Grossman. Welcome to Super States. I'm here today with Mahesh Grossman. Mahesh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And we're happy to have you. Mahesh, I always like to start out by having my guest describe what you do and share with us how that can transform people's lives.
Oh, great. Well, I'm a somatic hypnotherapist, which simply means I don't just hypnotize your mind, but I also work with your body. And your body is actually how you get into trance. It's one of the most natural things in the world. I literally start sessions by having you think about something, notice where you feel it in your body, and that's the jumping off point. And
Mm.
I specialize in anxiety. I specialize in healing trauma and PTSD, and that, of course, relates to all kinds of things because the reason you're overeating is probably related to to anxiety about something, and all the reason you're smoking. I also do pain management stuff, and that's sometimes a little bit different because there's different techniques that are less oriented towards your past, although a lot of the time, if you heal something from your past, the pain begins to lower.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so you just unloaded a lot of stuff there. And I'm really curious to explore some of this, but before I jump in, share with us kind of like your origin story. How did you become a somatic hypnotist?
Well, what happened was I did a heck of a lot of therapy, and at least 300-400 hours of therapy.
Mm.
And it was a lot of it was based on somatic stuff, on noticing stuff in your body as a
Hmm.
tool to get you to other places. Not as refined as what I do at this point. What I do is so fast. And then I was wanting to do more of that kind of stuff. I'd gotten good at doing it for other people. And somebody said, "Hey, you may get in trouble with the California Psychology Board. So you need something to protect you." And she suggested life coaching, but I looked at the law, and it turns out in California, the law, you're only allowed to work with the subconscious if you're a therapist or if you're a hypnotherapist.
Mm.
And so I wound up going to hypnosis school and discovering, I learned a whole bunch of new things, but some of the old things that I already knew how to do, some parts work things and stuff like that. If you had somebody in a deeper state, it worked so much better.
Mm.
At this point, my feeling is The aspect, if you get kind of an aha moment in therapy, it's from hypnosis,
Hmm.
because hypnosis is such a normal state, as you know. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
way I define it is it's imagination, concentration, and connecting to the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And so, my favorite example is people who read novels, and the novel says she saw a gray rock castle with a cherry red door. And the person reading the novel, a lot of people who are novel fans, will see a gray rock castle with a cherry red door. And you and I would say, picture a gray rock castle with a cherry red door. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're feeling sad or happy or whatever from a book or a movie or a TV show you're watching, you've already been hypnotized.
Yeah. So tell me how how this so you started out with these kind of doing this healing yourself,
Yes.
and then working with other people using some of these techniques, and then expanding into hypnosis. And w- once you did your hypnosis training, then what was the process like for you to start your business?
I got a web page going. I was an intern at first, so I did 6 months of just seeing people at very low costs, where I didn't get any of the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I had such amazing results. And then starting my business mostly came from my website. Most of my clients came from my website, and that worked really well for a little, for not super, super well, but good enough
Mm-hmm.
to feel okay. And yeah, yeah, and I wrote a book called The 1 Minute Anxiety Solution with 57 ways to lower anxiety. And so I've gotten people from my book. I've gotten people through my course, which is the Defy trauma course, which is my 5-step process to find and heal virtually anything that triggers you or makes you uncomfortable in life, or to deal with any kind of trauma if you're already aware of trauma.
Hmm. And what would you say has been the biggest change in how you work with people since when you first started, kind of when you were experimenting with the different techniques that you learned, to kind of going through everything you learn now, and how you work with them now?
Well, it's fascinating to watch for two things. Number one, I had all kinds of new stuff show up of my own. So I started doing things uh, for myself,
Mm,
and seeing them work. And it was a little by little process. So for the anxiety stuff and things like that, I used to use three sizes of hoses to kind of release the the anxiety. You imagine a hose attached to the part of your body where you feel the tension. And one day I suddenly realized, oh, a fire hose takes care of all the sizes. That was one little kind of thing. But eventually, what happened is I knew I had a system that I was doing with people, and I developed. You learn from your clients,
mhm,
and different things worked to work with clients, and so what happened was, well, first off, I created this 5-step process for a course. So until I did the course, I was doing a lot of the same things over and over again, but it wasn't standardized in the same way. It's still not, there's still coloring outside the lines. You can't help it. But
mhm.
one of the things that happened, so there's this piece of work. I was trained in how to do a soul retrieval, which is
Okay.
this shamanic practice with a horrible name. I don't like the name because what it really is, it's about repressed material. When bad things happen to us, we squash a part of ourselves,
Yeah.
and or repress it if you want to get more scientific. But I like to say squash. And so this process lets you unsquish different aspects of yourself.
Mm,
And it's this very long, convoluted process the way I was taught it. But I found that there's a really simple way to get to whatever it is that's inside that you're trying to bring back. And it comes back in a symbolic fashion, right? So it's like I had a one client who, his joy was represented by the hairbrush he used to brush his mullet back when he had hair.
mhm.
So, and so it's things like that, and other times it's more generic, like rubies or a ball of light. Well, I discovered in this process that this ball of light made people so peaceful and so calm that at some point I decided to apply it in other places, which was
Mm,
really interesting. So, one of the ways I work is I get people to think about something that upsets them or makes them
mm,
anxious or triggers them, or to just notice their body wherever they're holding tension in their body, because it works open ended just as well as if you have something specific. And we get to this point where you notice the tension in your body. I'll say, hey, notice how old you were the first time you had this sensation in your body. Were you 10 or under or 11 or older? And it's literally, this is the way I work with people. It doesn't even feel like they're in a trance, but they instantly, well, I don't know about instantly, but within a couple of minutes, they know. Some people are instant, but they'll know you do enough splitting the difference. I was 7 years old, and my mother was just so critical of me in the living room in front of other people. And so we do that. And so now we know what you're upset about. And then we have them say, Mom, it really hurt me when you criticized me like that, or criticized me all the time, or whichever. And the interesting thing that I've discovered through thousands of sessions is that every single time, 100% of the time, the mom inside their head is going to make an excuse.
mm,
Well, I thought you needed that, or you were embarrassing me, or that's how my mother treated me. Now, this is universal,
huh,
and this is what we're carrying around with us.
yeah.
And this is the part of ourselves that, that mom, if you were 7 years old and you're 40, that mom was 33 years younger than she is now, even if she's alive. And if she's not alive, but this is running you. This is like one of the reasons you have anxiety, or one of the trauma things that you're dealing with, is because you've got this thing that's so stuck inside you that when you picture telling your mom that she hurt you, she immediately makes an excuse. So what I do, I work with this two different ways. Excuse me. In one, in the normal situation, well, a lot of the time it's the normal situation, is we just ask that mom to be 5 years old. We picture that mom at 5 years old, and then we go back and say the same thing to the 5 year old version. And when the 5 year old version hears it, something a little more organic happens sometimes. So, Mom, it really hurt me when you criticize me all the time. Sometimes the 5 year old cries. Sometimes the 5 year old also says that's what my mother did to me, but it's a different quality. It's more open. It's less defensive.
Mm,
But then I will consistently ask, hey, ask that 5 year old whose love they were trying to get by criticizing you. And
mm,
we know the answers. It's the most amazing thing. One of the more amazing answers I got was a woman who was bullied when she was in kindergarten by these boys. And she knew without any reason, any logical reason, that the boy who was trauma, bullying her really badly, was he said, my father wanted a girl, and I was also the second, like my brother was the favorite. And she had no way of knowing that. But somehow
mm,
we do know this kind of stuff. But we get to the point where, why were you criticizing me all the time, Mom? Whose love were you trying to get? It's typically your mom or your dad's, unless, your grandmother or your grandfather's. And usually people know pretty easily. Sometimes it's a little bit of work. But what we do at this point, and this is the strangest thing, and I don't know why it works, is you have, let's say it's your mother, your mother's mother who criticized her. We have the grandmother, the mother's mother, put a ball of white light in her daughter's chest, in your mom's chest. And almost universally, I don't remember the last time I had someone not say yes to this. I said, then you ask, did you feel that? Does she feel that ball of light? And she says yes. We spread the ball of light all through her body. And then we let her grow up to be because she's 5 still. We let her grow up
mm,
and become the age that she was when she was criticizing the 7 year old. And then I have the person I'm working with say, Mom, it really hurt me when you criticize me all the time. And that mom, the I call her the enlightened mom, right? She's full of
mm.
light. So
Yeah.
we let her we don't let her. This spontaneous thing happens in your mind where she'll hug you or she'll say, "I'm sorry, I love you, you're a great kid." I mean, at some point I'll script it a little bit, just let her have the experience, but I still want her to say, "I'm sorry, I love you, you're a great kid." I won't do that anymore. And
Yeah.
she says that, and it's believable. And I say, "Well, was that so?" In the first hand, when mom says, "Well, blah blah blah, you were embarrassing me," was that? I'll ask, "Is that satisfying?" And of course, it's not.
Mhm.
But when we get to the point where the mother says, "I love you, you're a great kid, I'm never gonna, I'm sorry I hurt you that way, I won't do it again," it's completely satisfying. And it's
Yeah.
really powerful. It takes the trauma away. It takes the it's only going to work, piece by piece, right? It's not all one and done.
Right.
But when we go back to, let's say, the feeling of tension was in her chest, when we go back to that, it's less. Sometimes it's gone completely. It depends on the person and what they're working on, but it's less.
Mhm.
And then we can go back and do it again. And the whole story of healing trauma is three things. One story is the emotional tension that's left over and releasing that. And I have other ways to do that as well. That's more directly related to the tension, like the fire hose. But there's also the story that got passed on that you shouldn't have been how you were.
Mm.
I mean, however you were, whatever irritated your parent or whomever, or whatever their stuff is, there's some part of us that blames herself as children for everything.
Sure.
So when we get the parent to apologize, that releases something really powerful. And the third step is what I mentioned before, which I'll probably maybe take you through later, is a is re- unsquishing the parts of you that you squashed in order to stay safe.
Yeah.
So, which is, and none of it has anything to do with reliving the trauma, which is one of my biggest problems with EMDR is that you do a three, which is eye movement, a very popular scientifically studied approach where you go right into the story of what happened to you. But the beautiful thing about healing trauma is you don't the trauma you're ne- the trauma is over. It ended. Your problem isn't what happened to you. Your problem is what's happening to you right now in your body or running you unconsciously, whether you know it or not. And so when you heal that, you don't need the story. You just need to release. The story you need is the message that, hey, you deserve this, That's what you really need to heal. And
Yeah.
you need to heal the things you squashed and you need to release the emotional tension that you're carrying inside you. But it doesn't have to be screaming. I had laryngitis for years and years after therapy, 7 years of just screaming during therapy, having laryngitis for 4 days. And, I will get people to say something. I have three sentences I use in my practice: blank, you really hurt me when you blank; blank, you really scared me when you blank; and, well, I'm going to make the clean version: screw you, blank, you don't get to blank. And it's really important that it be said in an angry tone of voice. And so I'll get people to do that out loud
Mm.
because a lot of times people say, screw you, dad, you don't get to yell at me that way. And that doesn't sound very angry. That's a question, their voice is going up at the end of the sentence. So we
Right.
want to get the anger felt.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I will yell in the car once in a while. If something's showing up, I'll just yell, but it's not the most effective. It's the most effective to give yourself permission to
Mm.
have the feeling. But in terms of releasing the feeling, what's much better is to use either these imaginal practices. A lot of times I use something called a zipper technique. You want to try it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So just notice a place where you're holding tension in your body
Okay.
and tell me where it is.
It's my chest.
Great. So you feel your chest, and I'm the world's foremost zipper surgeon. I've been, the only one, so there's not much competition. But just imagine there's a zipper there and just unzip your chest. And then notice what's inside there. It could be sludge, it could be rocks, it could be snakes, it could be a million things, obviously. If you're seeing organs, that won't work. But, the real stuff, I've had nurses once in a while.
Hmm.
But notice, see, what do you see there?
So, like, what's inside that's creating the tension?
Well, no, don't work so hard. You'll just let yourself see an image.
I guess I see a bunch of children.
Oh, that's interesting. That's more complex than usual, although I get stuff like that. So let's get rid of let's take the children don't belong in there. And it's connected to grief. I'm feeling tears as you're doing this. So I don't know. Tell me how you'll get the children out of there.
Um, I'll I'll reach in and kind of give him my hand and pull him out,
Yeah, great.
send him on their way.
Yeah, you can send them on their way, or you can let them dissolve into atoms when they get out. Either works.
Okay.
And how did that work for you? How do you feel now?
I feel like my chest is way more open than it was for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and look how easy that was. And just zip up because you don't want to walk around with. But and I knew it worked because this weird. I have this weird thing. I'm an empath, and I sometimes, a lot of the time, I will burp things out for people. My stomach will growl if something works. In your case, there's like a little burp, and
Uh,
then I don't know what it represented to you, and you may or may not know. I just know that there was grief there because my eyes got very teary as you were doing that.
yeah. Okay.
So, so just how easy it is to release leftover emotional tension that you're carrying in your body.
Interesting. I like that. As you're working uh, with clients or people that are curious, kind of you work a lot with people that are dealing with anxieties, with different kinds of traumas. What would you say is like what do you have to teach them? What's their misunderstanding around what they're about to do with you?
Well, they're expecting to be in this really deep trance. And it's like you have to explain, hey, you're going to remember I'm sure you go through this. You're going to remember pretty much everything, except you won't because, an hour, you wouldn't remember an hour conversation in a coffee shop word for word
Right.
either. And um, you don't need to, it's not even going to feel like you're hypnotized because
Yeah.
what we're doing is we're connecting to the subconscious mind, and hypnosis is just so natural.
Hmm.
Anytime we have an aha moment, it's coming from a hypnotic, quote unquote, hypnotic state. It's just not special. And
I li-
yeah, and they've all seen those shows, the shows where people get put to sleep and do all these things, and
yeah.
then I have to explain. Well, those hypnotherapists are taught how to find the most hypnotizable people in an audience and bring them
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, there's a lot to a performing hypnosis show that makes it appear so big and entertaining.
Right. But I find that I can take people to deeper places inside them
Mm.
without taking them deep. In fact, like I had one client who was probably the most hypnotizable, and she had gastric bypass surgery, and she was drinking 7 Coca-Colas a day.
Mhm.
And so there's a point in the hypnosis where you take people through a process of going, rehearsal process. What's a day like without
Mhm.
with Coca-Cola? And we did 5 o'clock, and we did, before bed, and then when she woke up, what she had to drink, and ate lunch and break time, and then 5 o'clock. And at 5 o'clock, she started crying because she felt so deprived. It had been 2.5 minutes to get to 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
but she was crying. She was one of those people you definitely want at a stage hypnosis show.
Yeah.
And then that helped us figure out what would work for her. And she was down to 2 Coca-Colas the following week because she just didn't want to go through caffeine withdrawal to the extent that she thought she would,
Mhm.
which, having done that. I understood. So, but I couldn't take her to. There were places, more psychologically deep places that weren't as accessible to her.
Mm,
So there's no one-to-one correlation, obviously, but you're not missing out by going subtly. My hypnosis teacher said, "Well, on a yardstick, if you take somebody 12 inches, that's just as good as 30 at 6 inches in terms of their trance."
yeah.
And I found that to be true. Plus, I want to interact with people
Mm-hmm.
when they're in that deep state. This field forms between us.
Mm,
And so they feel more comfortable going to the places they need to go to because I've been to these places for 40 years. And so they may notice that they yawn, or they may burp, or their stomach may gurgle, or they may have
mm-hmm.
little muscle spasms. And simultaneously, as I said, there's almost no sessions where I don't burp
Mm-hmm.
if I go through a whole session with somebody. And but I also want to interact because I want to hear what's going on with them. And
And
imagery comes to me, and I ask people to try things on. So
mm,
I'm not a big fan of saying do this. Say, well, try this on like a blouse in the changing room at Marshalls or whatever,
yeah,
and see if it fits. I have no problem if it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit.
yeah.
A lot
What
of
what I
times, if you
really
say something,
like what I really like about how you're kind of approaching this is it's almost like you're working together essentially. I mean, obviously that's what
yeah,
we always want to do, but I like the way that you're trusting your own intuition. You're allowing things to come up for you. You're letting that burp happen, kind of release for your clients.
yeah.
Like there's a lot of really interesting things about how you're doing this work.
And what's weird is weird things happen. Strange things happen. I once said to this 20-year-old girl, to woman, I guess, I don't know, 21 is woman, 20 is a girl, until you can drink, you know. um, I said, you know, imagine it like a disco ball. And I'm like, why did I say that? She's 20. She doesn't know disco balls. And she said, oh, yeah, I do. I just bought a disco ball pencil holder yesterday.
uh,
And things like that happen all the time. The weirdest one was the opposite way. I had a client, so I used to have people bring in a guide to
okay.
be in their session, and oh, I never remember the name of this guy. This very popular statue in the Southwest in Arizona, Copo. I don't know. I can't get his name.
Okay.
But he had this guide, and one day, and he was working with me on pain management. And one day, he said to me, "So this guide is telling me there's a song by Leonard Cohen that has something to do with what I need to work on today." And I'm like,
Okay.
okay, I know if he said something about Broadway, he would have intellectually known that I have a very large capacity. I used to want to be a Broadway songwriter, so I know a
Okay.
lot of Broadway songs.
Yeah.
Leonard Cohen, I know two songs. One is Hallelujah because it's pretty much ubiquitous.
Yep.
Everybody knows Hallelujah, and I don't know it very well. But the other is a song called Suzanne, which in sixth grade, in guitar summer after sixth grade, I went to guitar camp and we were supposed to perform this song, which we never got to though. But I knew that very well at one point. So I'm like, okay, what are the words to Suzanne for this pain management client? Suzanne takes you down to a place by the river, blah, blah, blah. She wants to travel with you, and she wants to travel blind because she's touched your perfect body with her mind. And that was the
Mm,
sentence in the song. And it was very strange that this happened.
wow.
And the session was about his mother's impact on his chronic pain.
Mm, wow. And it's Cocapelli, right?
Yes, it is Cocopelli.
Yeah. I was letting
I'm
that
so glad
percolate.
you did that because I go to Quetzalcoatl and then I can't get to
Right.
Cocopelli.
That was where I was starting to, but that's not the
Yeah, yeah, I
Southwest.
have to just think Cocoa Puffs.
Not quite the same uh, vibe there.
Yeah, but sound wise, it'll take you to
Yeah.
Cocopelli.
So what? based on so you've been doing this for a long time, and
Mhm.
you did that real simple technique. That you have a tell us a little bit about the different books that you have. I know you've gotten a couple books that are out there. Uh,
Well, I only have the one. I have a book and a course.
a
The
book and a
book is
course,
called
great.
the book is called The 1 Minute Anxiety Solution with 57 ways to lower anxiety in a minute. About 35 exactly 35 of those techniques are hypnotic techniques, by which I mean
Okay.
visualizations that often connect to your body.
And are
So where
these
you
similar to like what you did ran me through with the zipper?
Yes, yes, very
Okay.
much. Or the fire hose where you're pulling stuff out, or a magician's hat where you're pulling handkerchiefs out of a magician's hat in your mind, where the tension is pouring beer barrels out. However, you happen to know how to pour beer barrels. um, all kinds of things like that, and they're very effective. There's breathing techniques, and there's there's back and forth techniques. There's even a finger dance. Uh, and some verbal things. Just I had a client who was appearing on political television and we got to kind of the root cause of his anxiety. But there's something called anticipatory anxiety, which simply means being anxious about being anxious.
Hmm.
And so I found that if I gave him little verbal things, like say however you're feeling, and let the last word rhyme, just start creating rhymes on the last word. So I'm afraid I'm going to look bad on TV. Levy, that was a bad example because the rhymes are bad. I'm afraid I'm going to look bad today. Blay, cray, say, stay. Doesn't have to be real words. It
Uh-huh.
can be anything, but it just shifts your mind. It takes away that kind of stuff. So
Interesting.
there are like 5 of those techniques, and there's some exercises. There's this great guy who does trauma release yoga all over the
Okay.
world when there's been a tsunami or something where obviously not everybody's going to be able to get therapy.
Mm.
He takes hundreds or thousands of people and through these yoga positions that make you shake
Mhm.
and shaking like animals shake to release their discomfort. Shaking
Mhm.
releases trauma as well. So there's a few of those techniques there.
Oh, cool. And is this like a is this an can we find this on Amazon? Where do we
Yeah,
find
no,
the book?
this is an ebook. It's through me. I want to. You can find everything I have, and I wanted to make it as easy as 123. So it's at anxiety123.com.
Oh, perfect.
So
Okay,
just
great.
just
Well,
remember anxiety123, as easy as 123, and you will find everything. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok. You can find the book. The course is called the Defy Trauma Course, and it's
mhm.
my entire program, my step-by-step process, exactly how I do it. I've been jealous of some of the experiences people have had from buying the course, feeling like, well, I wish they had done that when I was there working with me privately.
So the course teaches you to do these processes yourself?
Yeah, it's my step-by-step process. Yeah, I do have people a thing where I let people grab a guide to find a guide for themselves through the process, just in case they
Mhm.
need something. Um, I then take them from the very first step, which is noticing where you feel tension in your body,
Mhm.
getting to that point, figuring out the scene, and then doing all the things that you need to do to relieve yourself from this tension, from these leftover messages that you're carrying, from the leftover emotional messages you're carrying, and from unsquishing the parts of you that you squashed because of the
Mhm.
trauma.
Now, I think you kind of implied this, but it's not like a one and done type of process.
Mostly. Well, I mean, even within a session, you're going to do it multiple times
Uh-huh.
because you go back to your body and you notice where you feel it. Because
Okay.
look, nobody's had anybody with trauma. There's a lot of stuff. They've been through a lot of stuff and they have a lot of beliefs. Depending on what you're trying to accomplish, right? With anxiety, a lot of the time it's 3 to 5 sessions and you're capable of doing what you need to do. And your anxiety is cut enough that your life is working.
Mm.
With phobias, I've had people get over phobias in one session
Mhm.
simultaneously. So because you need an outlier, I had a woman who took 18 sessions to get over claustrophobia. It was the
Uh
most amazing thing. Normally, when I work after I work with somebody 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, they can't even handle coming every week. It needs
huh.
to be every 2 weeks because what they're experiencing, it needs to be integrated, and it takes two
Right.
weeks. This woman was coming twice a week for the first 7 weeks because she
Wow.
she could handle it, and there was more and more and more stuff, and we went so deep, and we covered all these past lives and all these other things, and her childhood had all these things in it. And what was interesting is the very last session, the way she got over it, it was a memory from middle school
Hmm.
where she was afraid of being in the bathroom and locking the door. And it took us the 18th session was when she finally said something about that, where that showed up as what to work on, where somebody beat her up in the bathroom in junior high or middle, I guess. Well, I don't know, depending on what era she's from,
Right.
but junior high or middle school.
Wow. So it took her that long to either feel safe to talk about that or for that one particular thing to come up. You had to kind of deal with all these other.
Sometimes you have to dig all the other stuff out before you can get to the.
Mm,
But most people, it's really fast. I had a woman who had a fear of needles
hmm.
and pricking herself. She would cry. She was 50, 55 years old, I think, at the time, or maybe less, maybe 50. She was 50, and she had been crying about her needles and not and pricking herself for 47 years.
Hmm.
And I wasn't even a hypnotherapist at the time. I but I said, I think I can help you with that. And I she was the mom of a all-star center fielder for the Baltimore Orioles. So that was kind of
Okay.
fun. We had talked about doing a book together, which is how I got to know her because I used to be a
Mm,
ghostwriter. And all I did was just say, so think about your fear of needles. You imagine and notice how old you are the first time you have that feeling. And she started crying. Her husband looked at looked at her like, who is this guy on the phone? And I said, "Well, how old were you the first time what's this from?" She was 3 years old. The doctor and her mother yelled at her because they couldn't, she was too tight to take a needle. And
huh.
she kept tensing up. And they're yelling at this 3 year old for doing what a 3 year old naturally does, right? And and so we did that, and we got her to the point where she would call her friends, and over the next week she started calling her friends before she'd take a needle to have
Mm,
the because what's really going on was she felt like incredibly unloved every time she'd prick her finger or get a shot.
yeah.
So her
Yeah.
friends would tell her, "I love you," and that week she was done. It was over,
Mm,
and she got regular with her insulin, and she was able to get off insulin, and she was able to lose 160 pounds. And she said to me that that's what started the losing the 160 pounds was that.
wow.
And that took 10 minutes. It's like
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how those seemingly innocuous moments from life can be those things that create, call it a traumatic moment or a highly
yeah,
highly emotional moment from the past.
because it creates a belief inside ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
We instantly believe that we're not loved.
Mm,
Or most of it, it's almost all of it's about love. I call myself the love heals anxiety guy
hmm,
because ultimately we're getting this part of ourselves to love ourselves. It's all about unconditional love. If we were feeling completely loved, we wouldn't have anxiety. I mean, there's physical danger. There's things that may remind us of physical danger, but
sure,
um, sometimes it feels like even then, if you even with that pattern match, if we felt unconditionally loved, we might not feel the anxiety.
for sure. So if somebody is interested in exploring this, like they know that they have some trauma from the past, what is it that is there anything they need to be aware of? Are there any kind of risks or challenges that somebody might want to consider before doing this kind of work?
No, because this is different from what you'd expect.
Mm.
because I don't care about the story very much.
Mhm.
So you're not going to re-traumatize yourself because you're really in the moment before the story happened. You're in a
Mm.
snapshot before the story happened.
Mhm.
And then you're saying, "Mom, it really, or whatever. Dad, it really hurt me when you touched me that way," or "Mister, it really hurt me when you touched me that way."
Mhm.
And it's not about reliving the experience or talking about the experience, or "Fuck you, Mister, you don't get to
Yeah.
invade my boundaries."
Mhm.
That's not even going to be, I mean, that's not even as triggering as touch me.
Mhm. Yeah, that's I like that because that's more like no, that's
Yeah,
creating that boundary again, right? It's
yeah,
like got
and then we
smushed
have to have the guy in our head apologize. However, there's another technique I use a lot. I call it the understudy technique. And this comes from psychodrama, really. I've made it a hypnotic technique, but in psychodrama, you act out the things that you're working on.
Mhm.
So, in psychodrama, you'd be in a group of people and somebody else would play the part. And
Mhm.
I said, well, forget that. Who needs a group of people? That's a lot of work.
We got all the parts in here anyway, so
Yeah, we can do it all that way. So I have the understudy, and the understudy is either someone you know and love, or a character from a book, TV show, movie, or whatever, or a celebrity. And then you say the same things to them. And I'll say before it starts, so in today's performance of your life, the role of Mr. Jones, or the role of your mother, is being played by, Meryl Streep, or
okay.
Phoebe
Uh-huh.
from Friends, or
Uh-huh.
today I finally found a father that I liked, and so it's Jimmy Stewart. And I was like, oh God, he'd be great.
And so you can use that understudy in place of the other person so that they can still say what they need to say. The understudy can say what needs to be said back. They could still have that
Yes.
experience.
And it totally transforms the whole thing. Sometimes you don't even want to see the person who hurt you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It kind of
Wow.
reminds me. There's somebody had a book about writing, and he said the best first line he ever heard from a novel was, "I wanted to strangle my mother, but that would mean touching her." And and if you feel that way, you don't want to even see your mom for that.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Yeah.
you replace her with, Taylor Swift. She seems to be on everybody's mind today. The
Yeah.
other thing that I should talk about that's really important, that's really different from what most people do, is we take in stuff. There's a whole set of ways we take in other people's energy. And
Mm.
one, there's something called epigenetic psychology, which means the trauma from grandparents and even and parents, and I've seen it go great in
Mm-hmm.
multiple generations. It gets passed on through the sperm and the egg, and you're carrying trauma that doesn't even belong to you.
Mm.
But the even more common way is, just by osmosis, by being around your mother and your father or your sibling or whoever it is, you take on some of their stuff that doesn't even belong to you. We're sponges, especially as kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the questions I ask a lot is, does this belong to you or someone else?
Mm.
And, I use things like muscle testing to get an answer beforehand for myself. There's also
Mm.
this intuitive thing that goes on. If you're not using muscle testing on your own, there's a part of you that knows. And my rule here is that if the answer is no, it's no. But if the answer is I don't know, well, yes is yes, obviously. But
Mm-hmm.
if the answer is I don't know, it's probably yes, because
Mm-hmm.
we know what it feels like when something belongs to us. We don't know what it feels like to be carrying. We only have the one body, so it's hard to tell what would belong to someone else or not.
Sure. Sure.
So and you go about getting rid of this stuff in a very different way, because you can't do process work for another person. Or if you can, it's a waste of time. It's a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I usually have people. I have different ways, but the main way I started off with is to have whoever that person is carry hold a giant red magnet, the silver tips on the top, and just let that magnet pull it out. And it'll either come in visual ways like magnetic filings, or one of the more interesting ones was daggers. Very critical mother. The
Mm-hmm.
daggers came out of this woman, and what's really interesting is it changes you. And in my first session with people, a lot of the time we'll do mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and grandma and other grandpa, and sometimes siblings. And that's worth about 18% of what you're carrying with you, it seems like.
Mm. Wow. I you've given me so many really amazing kind of ideas here and tidbits on helping people and helping ourselves. I really excited to learn more about what you do as well.
Great.
We've
So
talked a lot. Oh, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to throw in everything you need to know about me is at anxiety123.com.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as 123. It's not the prettiest page. I keep wanting to do a new one.
Well, sometimes if it's working, then if it ain't broke, don't
Yeah.
fix it. So we've talked a lot about trance, right? In different ways, from that lighter kind of trance to the deeper one. Now we know they're all the same. They're all just different variations of a trance state. And we hear a lot about trance nowadays. It seems to be becoming a much more talked about experience that people are having.
Mhm.
What is making you excited about the future of trance?
Well, I think everybody's in one all the time.
Yeah.
From the standpoint of this is all one thing and we're just dreaming it. The idea that we're an individual is a trance in and of itself.
Mm.
Uh, so that's coming from Eastern thought to a large degree,
Hmm.
and mystical Christian thought, and mystical Muslim thought, and all the mystical traditions tend to
Right.
have that underneath it. So maybe what excites me is
Mm, yeah.
breaking the trance of the stories that have been uh, passed into us without the software that's right. Yeah, we're being run by software,
Hmm.
and it changes when we do the work. I mean, anytime anyone is triggered, all they have to do is notice where they feel it in their body, ask themselves how old they were the first time they had that feeling, and move through that. And one of the things, I have something called the emotional overload first aid kit.
Okay.
And it's my step by step process to get to the original cause. And
Mm.
imagine a world where Putin wasn't triggered,
Mhm.
where,
Yeah.
where people were not acting out their trauma,
Mhm.
their need to be the part of themselves that isn't loved, where
Yeah.
people actually could change what makes them feel unloved to feeling loved, not by affirmations, which don't do much. As far as I'm concerned, they're very this. The mental level is not. It's deep inside you that this is all occurring.
Yeah.
But
Mm.
people look incredibly peaceful uh, after they go through this process. So I promised you I would take you through what is my version of the world's quickest soul retrieval.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so this is it's very simple. So you know how in hypnosis we always look for take people to a beautiful place.
Mhm.
I had a client whose beautiful place was the library, and it
Sure. Yeah.
changed my life because
Mm.
it's so easy. I don't have to guess what the other person's beautiful place is anymore.
Mhm.
So picture yourself in a library,
Okay.
and you're sitting out. You're not even sitting. You just see all the tables. You hear all the pages turning and all the whispering, and you see the really crappy lights on the ceiling and the weird paint on the walls and the thin carpet. And on one of the tables at the back of the bookshelves, behind the bookshelves, is a beautifully wrapped present. Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what color's the wrapping paper?
Red.
And is there a ribbon?
Yep. It's red as well.
Oh, interesting. You're monochromatic. It's not that's not common. So pull on the ribbon
Mm-hmm.
and open the present however you would open the wrapping paper, whether you're one of the neatniks or one of the get your nails in there and you know. And what kind of box is under the wrapping paper?
It's just a square brown box.
With a lid or without a lid?
It's like a corrugated box that has
Okay, yeah,
flaps.
it's an Amazon box probably.
Yeah.
Pretty much what everybody that's about 50 to 70% now. So do what you have to do to open the box, whether you need a little cutting thing or
Okay.
and let yourself just notice what's inside.
Okay. And it's paper, like
Okay, and under the paper.
stuffed with stuff. Um, there's like okay. It's um it's like a jewelry box. You know those kind of jewelry boxes that have a ballerina?
Yeah, yeah, beautiful.
That's what it is.
Wonderful. So ask the jewelry box whether it's something to keep or to get rid of.
Keep.
Beautiful. Sometimes it's to get rid of. And I never know. Sometimes I've been shocked. So now I ask all the time. And ask the jewelry box what it represents.
Innocence.
Oh, lovely. And ask the jewelry box if it's willing to become a part of you.
Yes.
Okay. And ask yourself whether you're willing to have it become a part of you.
Yes.
And then ask the jewelry box if it needs anything from you in order to stay with you forever.
It needs acceptance.
Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to accept your innocence?
Wow, there's some resistance there.
Say that
Um,
again.
I said there's some resistance there.
That's interesting. Good. So, well, let's work with the resistance. So put the jewelry box down, and we're going to the bookshelves of the library. Go to the other side, like walk around all of them till you're in the
Okay.
front rather than the back. And notice that, well, these are the kind of bookshelves where you take some books off you can see behind into the aisle between the two bookshelves.
Mm-hmm.
Know what I mean? Okay, good. So just put your hand on 5 books at the height at eye level for you,
Okay.
and feel the plastic, and then put them down. And then take another 5 books that were next to the first 5 books, and then look through the the little window you created and see in between those two bookshelves there may be someone, either a younger part of you or someone else that
Okay. It's a
and
younger
who is
me.
it?
It's
And
me,
how old?
like 7.
Yeah, so go meet each other in the end of the aisle and ask him if he's, well, it's an interesting thing because I don't quite have the words of what to ask him. Ask him if he's, ask him why it's not okay for you to connect to your innocence. Well, let me ask you a different way. I do know how to say this. Ask him why, ask him if he's tired of the job of having you blame yourself all the time. The opposite of innocence is blame, right? Or
Mm.
guilt, or making you feel guilty.
Yes, he's pretty tired of that.
Great. Ask him if he's willing to retire from that job.
wants to know what he'd do.
How ask him if he'd like to experience all the love and joy that the universe has to offer.
Yeah, he'd like that a lot.
Okay, and is there anyone he'd like to share that with or be with, or does he just want to go do his own thing?
Yeah, there's somebody he'd like to be with.
Who would he like to be with?
A girl that he knew when he was
Oh,
7.
beautiful. So picture a pyramid of light, golden light, and picture the girl in the golden light waiting for him. And then let him walk over to the golden light to join the girl. And would it be okay if they dissolved into that light and became all the joy and love that the universe has to offer?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So let them do that. Yeah. Yeah. And let that happen. And then let's just notice the jewelry box again. And what did it say it needed from you in order to stay with you forever?
Acceptance.
Yeah. Are you willing to accept your innocence now?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So put the jewelry box in your body. Do you feel it when it enters?
Yeah.
Yeah, and let that feeling get stronger. And then let that spread through your body. Yeah, and you can anchor it. Is there a word you use to describe the feeling?
Um, I guess freedom comes to mind.
Freedom. Beautiful. Great. And where do you feel the freest? A place that you can reach.
My chest.
Yeah, so put your hand on your chest. And every time you put your hand on your chest and say freedom, you can feel this way again. And you need, of course, to practice it. Otherwise, you'll forget to do it. So just, I recommend meals and bedtime and waking. And yeah, I know you know about anchoring, but I'll tell your audience that I used to take people out of that state so they could prove to themselves that you can put your hand where and say the word and it happens again, and it always did. Except there were some people I couldn't get them out of the state, out of the peacefulness. But most of the time, if I just asked people to think of something they judge about themselves or someone else, it would completely lower their vibration and their peace. And then they'd put their hand back and say their word, and they would feel better again and feel peaceful again. But I don't do that anymore because it seems so mean. Because, and I've done it 100 times. So as long as somebody believes that I'm telling the truth, that'll happen. So that process helped me get someone over a depression that lasted 20 years after her husband had been murdered by someone they
Wow.
both knew. She had been
Wow.
depressed for 20 years. She got rubies. And just like you, there was resistance. And I don't get resistance very often. So it was kind of fun to get to do it. I always love resistance because anything that's resisted means there's going to be a bigger healing. Well, not that the other healings aren't big, it's just healing something you resist is it's just an inch big better.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
so I asked her if what the rubies needed in order for her to stay with them, stay with her forever.
Yeah.
And she said they needed her to allow love in. I said, "Are you willing to do that?" She said, "No."
Mm-hmm.
So we did. I didn't have the library back then, but I had similar techniques. And she eventually was willing to allow love in. She looked peaceful at the end of the session, but I didn't think much of it. It was just everybody looks peaceful at the end of a session. You know how that is. So she comes back. Every week she had been coming to me in gray sweatpants and a gray top, whatever those things are called, jacket.
Yeah.
Oops, let me get rid of this. And suddenly she was wearing a pink top and brand new blue jeans. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And then she said to me, I had dinner with my son. He didn't recognize me. Her son was 29. His mother
Mm.
had been depressed since he was 9 years old.
Wow.
He hadn't seen his mother looking normal or happy in 20 years. And that's the power of this step, which it's not exactly a soul retrieval. It's whatever it is. It's just finding what you're repressing or squishing and bringing it back in for yourself.
Yeah. I love that. That was really powerful. Thank you for running me through that.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, if
Now,
there's
so
resistance, it's going to be extra powerful. So,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I just really appreciate that. So if people want to learn more about you, it's anxiety123.com.
yep, as easy as 123, anxiety123.com. And you can
And
set
what's
up a
the one
free
inside?
consultation.
Go
Say it
ahead.
again. Oh,
What?
the emotional overload first aid kit is where you get the beginning of this process that you can use anytime you're anxious or triggered, or even if like you find yourself reaching for the potato chips and you're trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
Uh, it'll help you find out what's going on under the surface
Hmm.
that's that's really bothering you.
And all that is available at anxiety123.com.
123.com.
Easy
Yeah.
as 123.
Yes, exactly.
What's the one insight you want the audience to leave with today, Mahesh?
Anytime you're triggered, it's your stuff. And if you can heal, if you can find out what it is, you can have much better relationships and more peace in the world, which is why I give away that emotional overload first aid kit for free. It is the one thing that if everybody really did would change the world.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate the conversation. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Joshua. I enjoyed it too.
Hey there. If you feel like something holds you back from reaching your true potential, listen up. I've got something incredible to share with you. I'm offering a free 7-day email program that helps you break through those blocks to get to the unshakable confidence and success that you deserve. Imagine starting each day with a clear mind, a strong sense of purpose, and the confidence to go after whatever it is that you truly want. This program guides you through a powerful process to uncover and then eliminate the root causes of your limitations. You receive daily emails with practical steps, immersive audio exercises, and techniques that help you rewrite your personal story. As your expert coach, I am there to support you every step of the way. Now, people have used this program to remove old triggers and create a new empowering mindset, or others have used it to remove resistance to taking certain actions. You can have these same kind of results or something different. If you feel ready to break free from what holds you back, the fears, the worries, the anxieties, those old patterns, whatever they are, and you're ready to embrace a life of confidence and fulfillment, go to xfactorhypnosis.com/transform. It's completely free and you gain a more empowered you. You can use the link in the show notes or just type xfactorhypnosis.com/transform into your favorite browser. Thanks for listening. And remember, stay curious, keep growing, and embrace your transformation.